I tried speed dating at 70. Here's what really happened. I never imagined that at 70 years old, I would be sitting in a hall full of strangers, a paper name tag stuck awkwardly to my blouse, waiting for a bell to tell me when to talk and when to move on. If someone had told me years ago that I would be trying speed dating at this age, I would have laughed and shaken my head. But there I was, nervous, hesitant, and yet strangely hopeful. For most of my adult life, love was something I didn't have to think about. I married my husband when I was in my 20s, and for decades he was my anchor. We raised 2 children together, celebrated birthdays and graduations, worked through bills and disagreements, and grew old side by side. He wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but we were perfect for each other. When he passed away 8 years ago, it felt as though the color drained from the world. The house became unbearably quiet. The routines that once gave comfort became reminders of what I had lost. His chair at the dinner table sat empty, yet I could never bring myself to move it. His jacket still hung by the door, untouched, as if he might walk in at any moment. For years I lived like that. On the outside I looked busy. I had my grandchildren, my garden, my church, and a circle of friends. People said to me, "You're so strong," but they didn't see the nights when I sat by the window with a book I couldn't focus on, listening to the hollow ticking of the clock. Loneliness is quiet, but it is heavy. And the older I got, the more I wondered if that would be my final companion. My daughter was the one who challenged me. One evening she came over for dinner, and as we cleared the dishes she said, "Mom, I want to ask you something. Have you ever thought about dating again?" I nearly dropped the plate in my hands. Dating? At my age? I laughed, but she didn't. She placed her hand over mine and said softly, "You gave so much of your life to Dad, to us, to everyone. Don't you think you deserve to be cared for too?" I dismissed it at first. But the seed had been planted. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she was right. It wasn't about replacing my husband. It was about acknowledging that I was still alive, and that life still had room for joy, companionship, and laughter. And so, after weeks of hesitation, I signed up for a local senior speed dating event. The night of the event, I almost didn't go. I stood in front of my mirror, staring at the reflection of a woman with silver hair, lines around her eyes, and a heart that had been bruised by time. I nearly convinced myself I was foolish. But then I remembered my daughter's words, "You deserve joy again." So I put on my favorite blouse, slipped on a necklace my husband had given me years ago, and walked out the door. The hall was buzzing when I arrived. Small round tables were arranged neatly across the room, each with 2 chairs facing each other. Soft background music played, and a volunteer handed me a name tag and a glass of water. Around me were men and women, all between 65 and 75, fidgeting nervously, adjusting collars, smoothing skirts, and exchanging small smiles. We were strangers, yet every one of us carried a story. Every one of us had known love, loss, or loneliness. The bell rang and my first date sat down. He was about 72, with a silver mustache and kind eyes. He leaned in, cleared his throat and whispered, "I haven't done this since 1969. I laughed, and the sound surprised me. For 3 minutes we talked about books, the weather, and his vegetable garden. Nothing earth-shattering, but after years of quiet dinners alone, it felt refreshing just to laugh with someone again. The bell rang again, and a new gentleman took the seat. This one was lively, almost too lively. He launched into stories of his travels through Europe, his cooking adventures, and his health battles. He told me about the spices he used in his chili and how his doctor had scolded him for eating too much salt. He leaned close, eyes shining, eager to share. I smiled, realizing it didn't matter if I cared about chili recipes. What mattered was that he wanted to be heard. And maybe that was what we were all here for. Not just romance, but the simple gift of being listened to. Another man sat down, and before even asking my name, he pulled out his phone and proudly showed me photos of his grandchildren. There they were, birthdays, school plays, little faces smiling. I nodded politely, amused but slightly puzzled. He seemed more eager to prove he was a good grandfather than to get to know me. Still, there was tenderness in his voice, and I admired his devotion. Then came a man named Harold. He was quiet, with gentle hands that fidgeted with his glasses. He admitted shyly that he hadn't spoken to a woman outside of family in years. His words came slowly, but his honesty touched me. It reminded me that sometimes courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just showing up despite your fears. And then there was Thomas. He was 72, a widower like me. He didn't start with jokes or stories. Instead, he sighed softly and said, "My evenings are too quiet." He told me about the empty chair at his kitchen table, about cooking too much food out of habit, and about the silence that seemed to grow heavier with each passing year. As he spoke, I felt my chest tighten. He was describing my life. For a moment, we didn't need to speak. Our eyes met, and in that silence we understood each other. Would you ever try something like this? Walking into a room full of strangers at 60 or 70, just to see if love might surprise you? Share your honest answer in the comments. Your story might give someone else the courage they need. The evening rolled on. Some conversations made me laugh until my cheeks hurt. One man joked that he had already forgotten half the names he had heard that night. Another asked me what my favorite decade was, and we both laughed as we remembered music and dances from the 1960s. Some conversations were awkward, filled with pauses, yet even those felt meaningful, because each pause held bravery. Each person at that table had taken a risk just by being there. By the end of the night, I hadn't met a soulmate. No one swept me off my feet or promised me forever. But I left with something more important: courage. I proved to myself that I wasn't too old to try. I discovered that laughter and companionship weren't locked away in the past, but were waiting patiently for me to reach out. When I stepped outside, the night air was cool against my face. I wrapped my coat tighter, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The hall behind me was still glowing with chatter and laughter, and for the first time in a long time I felt connected, not just to the people I had met, but to the possibility of life itself. At home, I walked into the same quiet house, poured the same cup of tea, and sat in the same chair by the window. But the silence felt different now. It wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't a cage. It felt like space. Space that could be filled again, space that had room for new beginnings. I looked at the empty chair across from me and, for the first time, didn't feel crushed by its presence. Instead, I felt hope. Do you believe love has an age limit? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your words might be the encouragement someone else needs. That night, I realized that love isn't about age. Love is about courage. And at 70, I discovered that I still had plenty of courage left.